This is the show where NFL legends come to tell their stories. This is the show where we spotlight what's good in the world of sports. This is also the show where we appreciate the NFL Alumni Association and the Gridiron Greats. For this is Thursday Night Tailgate with your hosts, Chris Mascaro and Bob Lazzari. Guys, it's finally tonight. I've waited all day. Have a good time and take it away.
You're darn right we can't wait for tonight. Good evening, fun, and thank you for joining us on Thursday Night Tailgate, where your favorite NFL legends live on. We really appreciate you tuning in tonight and sharing the next couple of hours with us. Chris Mascaro and Bob Lazzari back with you tonight. Bob, great to be back in the saddle after a week off. How are you, my friend?
Same to you, Chris. I'm doing well, and hello to everyone else out there, and sounds like a good show on tap, my friend.
Yeah, we're going to have a lot of fun tonight. We've got 5 more great guests that Bob and I are looking forward to sharing with you, and we're going to kick off tonight's show with a return visit from former Steelers defensive back J.T. Thomas. We had a great time when J.T. joined us back in February, so very excited to have him back on the show again tonight. And Bob, I look forward, as always, to hearing more of J.T.'s stories, from being a member of all 4 of the Steelers Super Bowl championship teams back in the 1970s. Plus, want to get his thoughts on his alma mater, Florida State, heading into this coming season with a new head coach, Willie Taggart, and obviously get his thoughts as well on the Steelers' upcoming season. But great that he's going to be back with us.
Yeah, it's got a Steelers theme here tonight, Chris. It's going to be a lot of fun. J.T., former first-round pick, early 70s Steelers, has some Super Bowl jewelry for all his efforts, and picked off 20 balls over a very impressive career, Chris. Nice to have him back.
Yes, it is. About 45 minutes from now, we're going to get a return visit from another Steeler, punter Craig Colquitt. And Bob, like JT, want to get more Craig's memories from being a part of those 70s teams, in particular, stories about Jack Lambert. Craig recently tweeted out that his defensive hero was Jack Lambert. He was mine as well. Plus, many of the guys that he was with. I want to understand, and this is something that Tony talked to us about with respect to Jack Lambert, right? Tony talked about Jack Lambert smoking in the locker room before and at halftime of the Pro Bowl in 1983. Want to get the idea from Craig. Did that happen all the time? Was it only Jack? Was it more of those guys from that era that did that sort of thing? I'm curious to hear those stories, Bob.
Yeah, that was a different era, shall we say. And again, Craig, from the famed Colquitt family of punters, Chris, that has dotted the NFL landscape since the 70s. So great to have him back. He has a ton of stories.
Yeah, he'll join us, like I say, a little bit later on in the hour. Then we'll kick up hour number 2 with a return visit from former Bears wide receiver and LSU Hall of Famer, Wendell Davis. And Bob, Wendell's been such, a great friend to us over the years. He remains second on LSU's all-time list for receiving yards and in the top 5 in touchdowns. So it's pretty easy to see why he's a member of their Hall of Fame. But it'll be great having Wendell back on the show with us.
Definitely one of our all-time favorites, Chris. And again, he's joined us on both the TV, radio sides. Another first-round pick back in the 80s by the Bears, and another guy that had a solid career, a good 6 years in the league, and he's become a good friend to this show.
And then we're going to round out tonight's show with a return visit from author Ron Lippock. Ron wrote a wonderful book titled Steelers Takeaways, Players' Memories Through the Decades. It's available out on Amazon.com, and Ron is knowledgeable as anybody on the history of the Steelers and the players that have been there. I think he's interviewed just about every living member of the Steelers alumni. He's got some great stories about both J.T. Thomas and Craig Colquitt, as well as, so many other Steelers that we've been privileged, Bob, to have on the show. So it'll be great to get more of those stories, plus Ron's thoughts on the upcoming season as well.
We always have a ton to talk about with him, and it's almost as if the person who booked all these guests tonight is a Steelers fan. What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, one might surmise that, and that just might happen to be true. You never know. But yeah, we certainly have a Steelers theme with the show tonight, plus a couple of other great friends of ours. But looking forward to hearing more of Rod's stories when he joins us about 90 minutes from now. So, folks, you know what? We're going to have a lot of fun, like I said earlier, like we always do here on TNT. So, you know what? Sit back, relax. Let us take your mind off everything else that's going on in your life for the next couple of hours. And as you all know, we are brought to you by the great folks over at the Louisville Slugger Museum and Factory, the Salt Creek Golf Retreat up in beautiful Nashville, Indiana. Our partners at the NFL Alumni Association, Mike Ditka's organization, the Gridiron Greats, who we love. Please go online and check them out at gridirongreats.org. Plus, check out former Houston Oilers quarterback Dan Pastorini and his company, DP Quality Foods. Dan has a lineup of award-winning spices that you're going to love. You can find them online at dpqualityfoods.com. And former Pro Bowl quarterback Drew Bledsoe and Doubleback Winery. You can find their great selections of wine online at doubleback.com.
It's time for another edition of Bob's Take. So, Bob, tell us, what's on your mind tonight?
Bob, I want to start this week's edition of Bob's Take by getting your thoughts on Todd Gurley's new contract. He signed the richest running back contract ever, 4 years, $60 million. Now, the Steelers were only willing to go as high as $14 million a year for Le'Veon Bell. Devontae Freeman was the highest paid running back prior to Gurley's contract. He was making $8.25 million a year. So a couple things, Bob. A, did the Rams overpay for Gurley? Again, making nearly twice as much as Devontae Freeman is now making. And is Le'Veon Bell worth even more?
But I think they did, Chris. The Rams just kind of raised the bar for running backs and what they'll be making, especially if you're among the top ones in the league. Now, let's face it, Chris. I mean, I don't think the Steelers and Bell could have been that far off. I mean, if they're talking 13, 14, 15 million, I mean, how far could they have been off? I'm not sure. You know, we've heard so many different things about why it wasn't done. I mean, to me, it didn't seem like they were far away, but it just didn't get done. I don't know why. But, I mean, you know, I did a little stat looking at this week, and get a guy like Gurley, Chris, he actually, I mean, Bell has been, when you talk about the best running backs in the league, I think Bell has been, at least for the last couple of years, his name always comes up first, usually. But Gurley this past year, Chris, more rushing yards than Bell, more receiving yards, more touchdowns, better yards per attempt. I mean, that's one hell of a year when you think about it. So I got to give Gurley and his agent credit. They struck while the iron was hot. I think a 4-year deal, Chris, is fair. You and I have talked about running. You can't give running back 6 years deals. It doesn't happen. It won't happen anymore because what's the shelf life on an NFL running back? 4 or 5 years maybe, right? And then you got a guy like Bell, probably has a little more mileage on Gurley. He's got a couple years on him, but Gurley was just in a perfect position to sign this contract. I think it's fair. I think that's going to be the going rate for at least the top 5 running backs in the league will be up that way, but it is a major upgrade in salary from what Freeman was making. So it's a terrific story, and we'll see where things head with Bell. And of course, we know Bell is going to be making some big bucks anyway this year.
So the next step after that, Bob, is Rams defensive tackle and reigning player of the year, Aaron Donald, is going to be holding out for more money, right? Training camp opened, this week. He's not there, and he's saying he wants more money. Do you think that the Gurley contract is not going to have a trickle-down effect into negotiations with Donald? Again, right? Both Rams, right? So he's seeing what they were willing to do and how wide they were willing to open the checkbook for a running back like Gurley. Again, nearly making twice as much as the next highest paid player, right? Le'Veon Bell's getting his 14 under the franchise tag, but for a long-term contract, he's getting almost double what the next highest paid player was getting. So now you got Aaron Donald, again, defensive player of the year. He's a disruptive force, makes that defense what it is. Is that going to be a trickle-down effect causing those negotiations to be even more contentious now?
crazy situation, Chris, because they had a lot of guys at the same time. You had a guy like Brandon Cooks who signed a deal with them. Of course, the Gurley deal. A couple other guys that have signed deals there, and it's almost as if Donald it's maybe, well, it's got to be kind of a lack of respect thing. I mean, there's no question this guy's one of the top defensive players in the league, and let's not feel too sorry for him, Chris. He's going to make $7 million this year. The majority of his money is coming to him this year. And you know, I was thinking of this too, Chris. I mean, where are we in sports in general when guys are under contract and they could still hold out? You know what I mean? I mean, there's got to be something done. I mean, you know that making money in sports, it's all a question of timing. Some guys come around at the right time. You signed a deal 3-4 years ago. You basically, well, it should be the fact that I will play for that long and I will make this much money. Chris, how do they get out of not showing up for camp when they're under contract? I mean, I know it's been going on for a long time, but it seems to me, if this is legal documents, what am I missing here?
Yeah, I know. That's a tough one, right? You know, you think you sign your name on the dotted line and you got to live up to that contract. It was agreeable at one point in time. You thought that was going to be a good deal for you. You should be obligated to play out that contract. Now, the opposite side of that coin is these guys, are as injury prone as anybody. It's a risky business. Your shelf life for playing the game is so short. They want to try to get as much money as they possibly can. So, I mean, I get both sides. But, that's sort of the thing, right? If you didn't want to, if you thought you might get more money later, right, and you didn't want to risk it for as long as you're going to play under this contract, then sign a 2-year deal, right? I mean, you sign a 4-year deal for on some level for the security of it. Now we know, football contracts aren't typically fully guaranteed, and you could end up getting the short end of the stick. But you would think you would want to put that in as part of your stipulation, right? Is try to get as much guaranteed money as you can, get it fully guaranteed for 2 years, but you sign for 4 years, whatever that is. If you want the out, then work with your agent to get the out. But if you're going to agree to the contract, you should show.
I just don't understand it, Chris. Any other job in the world, you can't do that, right? I mean, you're going to do that at your job? I mean, think about it.
Yeah.
I mean, you better show up, and you better, work for the money that you agreed to. But I just don't get that. And it's not a question of they wouldn't take care of this guy when it's time anyway. I mean, that's going to happen. The guy is right at the top of his profession, but. Again, it comes down to ego. It's always ego.
Bob, one more. And last week, Jaguars defensive tackle Malik Jackson, who we've had on our spotlight on the positive a couple of times, including you did another one just a couple of weeks ago. He recently said the Jags are going to go 16-0 this coming season, and then this week, Jags linebacker Telvin Smith said that they were the best team in football, and I get their enthusiasm. And why they have a lot to be excited for this upcoming season, right? They had a great year last year. But when guys start coming out with those sorts of comments, Bob, are you setting yourself up and the rest of the team up to be the villain, right? You're going to get negative reaction from fans wherever you go, particularly the rival teams that you have. Like you look at the Steelers and the Patriots, both of those teams are already gunning for the Jags or anticipate playing the Jags, whether it's during the regular season or in the postseason. Does it give teams that bulletin board material that you really don't need to give them? And especially when you've got a guy like Blake Bortles as your quarterback, who isn't, one of the best quarterbacks in the league. And now you're putting a lot of pressure on him to perform. And then, of course, the rest of the team. Now you got a target on your back. Is that a smart thing to do? Or is it just, guys being with the bravado and excited?
It's a combination, Chris, but let us remind our listeners here, this is two defensive guys talking that actually their team gave up 42 points in the playoffs, and they actually won that game, and I don't have to remind you of that. But that's, this is a team, does it give them bulletin board material? Absolutely, Chris. In this age of social media and everything else, this stuff gets out there, and people hear about it, and people react more than they used to. You would think that you'd like to see them have a little more class and just quiet confidence. I mean, Jalen Ramsey did a lot of talking last year, Chris, before the New England game. So this is a team that obviously likes to talk, and they are confident, and they're going to be a good team. But you do set yourself up. You have these other opponents that, if there's a couple, shall we say, maybe so-called dirty players on some of these other teams, Chris, they may be targets, and you just don't want to set your guys up for that. If you go in there with a lot of respect and have a good reputation, guys are going to play hard to try to beat you, not hurt you. So this is not a good thing for them. And like you said, Blake Bortles is not Tom Brady. Unless Tom Brady's playing for Jaguars, they're not going 16-0.
All right. There you go, folks. That is Bob's take for this week. And, folks, as you guys all know, we are sponsored by the Louisville Slugger Museum and Factory. And if you love baseball, you got to go check out the Louisville Slugger Museum and Factory. They were inducted into the TripAdvisor Certificate of Excellence Hall of Fame. And the museum is a very cool experience for everybody in your family because you get to go walk their live production line and see some of the 1.8 million bats that they make every year, and they've been doing it now for 134 years. Please don't miss the bat vault when you're there because you get to go in there and hold game-used bats from some of the game's greatest legends, guys like Hank Aaron and Babe Ruth, Ted Williams, my hero growing up, Willie Stargell. To find out more information about the museum and to book your visit, go online to sluggermuseum.com. We're also proud to be sponsored by our good friend and TNT Hall of Famer Randy Manier and the great folks up at the Salt Creek Golf Retreat in beautiful Nashville, Indiana, which, oh, by the way, was voted one of the top 20 small towns in the country by Smithsonian Magazine, as well as one of our newer sponsors, Houston Oilers quarterback Dan Pastorini and his company, DP Quality Foods. Let's hear about both of them from Joe LaGenusa, and we're going to get to our first guest, JT Thomas, right on the other side of these words from both of those sponsors.
If you're looking for a great place for your annual golf outing, a weekend golf getaway, or just a round of golf with your buddies, then Salt Creek Golf Retreat is just what you're looking for. Centrally located in Nashville, Indiana, just south of Indianapolis and west of Cincinnati. This challenging but fair 18-hole golf course appeals to all skill levels, and its scenic views of rolling hills and tree-lined fairways are sure to make golfing memories for years to come. Owned and operated by former Purdue and New York Giants fullback Randy Manier, Salt Creek Golf Retreat offers stay-and-play packages that include golf and a fully furnished 1- or 2-bedroom condo. After your round, be sure to stop by the 19th Hole Sports Bar and Restaurant for great food, fun, and drinks. Randy and his staff will treat you like family. For more information, log on to saltcreekgolf.com. That's saltcreekgolf.com. Or give them a call at 812-558-5944. Salt Creek Golf Retreat. Start making your golfing memories today. Most folks are familiar with Dan Pastorini's accomplishments on the football field or in race cars. But what most don't know? Dan's family background in the restaurant business. For 37 years, Dan's parents, Dante and Dorothy, owned and operated Pastorini's Longhorn Restaurant. So the Pastorini family has a long history of making great-tasting food from family recipes. Dan and his partners want to bring some of that to you with their Texas-style rub, Texas-style hickory rub, and their garlic and herb seasoning. First introduced back in 2011, Dan's Texas-style rub immediately began winning awards, taking home the first-place trophy for Best Ribs at the Pasadena Livestock Show and Barbecue Cook-Off. They did it again at the 2012 Texas Ranger Wounded Warrior Cook-Off, and the awards just keep on coming. Check out Dan's line of spices online at dpqualityfoods.com. That's dpqualityfoods.com. And take what you put on the grill to a whole new level.
Yeah, check them both out online at saltcreekgolf.com and dpqualityfoods.com. All right, now back with us here on Thursday Night Tailgate is former Steelers Pro Bowl defensive back JT Thomas. Let me remind you about JT's background. He is from Macon, Georgia, which is just a little south of me here in Atlanta. He played his college ball at Florida State. He was a first-round draft pick, the 24th overall selection in 1973 by the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he played in the league from 73 to 1982. All but his last season was with the Steelers. He played that last season in Denver. He was a part of all 4 of the Steelers' Super Bowl championship teams in the 1970s. JT was named to the Pro Bowl in 1976, and over the course of his career, he had 20 interceptions. He forced 2 fumbles, recovered 1, and he scored 2 touchdowns. Hey, JT, Chris and Bob here. Thanks for coming back on the show.
Hey, guys, I'm glad to be back. How you guys been doing?
No, we're fantastic. JP, how about you? What's been going on with you? Catch us up.
I've been in the restaurant business, most of my career, and I'm in a coffee business for the last few years. So with a company called Crazy Mocha, and I'm franchising coffee beans, I guess, for lack of a better word.
So, JT, I want to start our time with you tonight by getting your thoughts going back to your time at Florida State and taking a look ahead to this upcoming season for FSU. And they finished 7-6 last season, 3-5 in the ACC. They've got a new head coach in Willie Taggart. I'm curious to get your thoughts. Are you excited to see him take over the program? Are you cautiously optimistic about this season? Or are you going to wait and see, in wait-and-see mode? How do you feel about the Seminoles in this upcoming season?
Well, we have a bunch of guys that we on the internet, actually communicating a lot, and very excited about Willie coming in. I think he's been embraced, and he brings an attitude and a culture, and I think it was time for a change. So we're very excited. After last year, Jumbo, he had a great run there, but I think sometimes change is good, and I think he will bring a new flavor, a new attitude, and like I say, we're a new generation of young men in athletics, and I think his timing is really is impeccable, really. Yeah.
So, JT, in order to feel kind of good about the season, do you have sort of a high water mark that you're looking at, saying hey, look, if they win 7 games this year, they win 8 games, 9 games, what's your expectation? Where do they got to get to in order for you to feel good about this season? If they had 500, I think that would be good. I'm sure now they expecting better than that, but you make a transition of a culture that's been there, even go back to Bobby before Jimbo, that was kind of just passing the baton. So, you're really making a huge cultural shift there. And can you make it in a season? I don't think so. I think if they come out at 500 this year, I think that's a win. Now, granted, I'm a big fan. I'm going down for homecoming, and I like to see them, win 8 this year. And again, but if I'm not a gambler, but if I was a gambler, I would give them, they'll play at 500 this year, definitely. Yeah. So, regardless of the record, right? The Florida State game. If they come out with a win over Florida, does that make a successful season? Like, look, win that game.
That's a winning season. I was there my 4 years, and we never beat Florida. We never did. And we had some great seasons out there. We never had a losing season, but I was never able to, carve me a gator and fry them up and make, gator, desserts or appetizers out of it. No.
Bob, questions for JT?
It's great to speak to you again, JT, and we're at the point now where teams are going back to training camp, and I want to talk about your first training camp. Here you are, you were the first-round draft pick, 73, Latrobe, Pennsylvania. Take me back, JT, your memories when you first arrived there.
Well, when I first arrived there, obviously, you kind of enthralled. You don't know what to expect. You're young. But what really was, the Steelers had only won their first winning season prior to that. Franco's immaculate reception. So really, I'm coming in on the second season of that first winning season in 40 years. The biggest intimidating factor there was the tempo. I was getting run over by L.C. Greenwood. He was saying, hey, get out of the way, and I wasn't accustomed to defensive ends and linebackers running up my butt. So I had to adjust to the tempo there. But what I really remember most of all, it was strictly a survival training camp. It was a process of elimination. And, we had 4 weeks to 2 days. I would lose 6 pounds in the morning and I would drop another 7, 8 in the afternoon. So it was probably the worst thing in my life was training camp. And it never it never subsided. You never got accustomed to it because Chuck Noll's training camp was, you come there, everyone was a rookie, I think, except Joe Green. I think every other guy was thinking I make a cut.
And you had a pretty good year. I mean, get into all the games that year, JT. You learned the system. You actually picked off a pass. I'm wondering if you remember that first career interception against two, and when did it happen?
No, I don't remember the first one, but I do remember that first season because they had brought me in to replace a great cornerback, John Wowzer, who had played under Vince Lombardi. So, and I'm here taking John's job, and John knew that, but John was my greatest fan, my biggest support, and I learned more from John than anyone because you can understand the number one draft choice who played corner and safety. You know, my friend, homeboy, Mel Blunt, you know, they kind of said hi and bye, and Glenn Edwards, Mike Wagner, you know, you bring a number one in, you know, so where he's going to play, whose job he's going to take. But John knew I was brought in to, you know, really to replace him. But he really taught me more, and really, it wasn't for John, I probably wouldn't actually adjusted as quick as I did because he had played under Lombardi, and John knew stuff that even our great defensive coordinator, Bud Carson, didn't know about the game. It was just amazing, his knowledge of the game, and it kind of catapulted me. Even Bud asked me, Carson asked me once, you know, I said, I guess in the interview, I said I had learned a lot from John Wowzer. And walking in one day, Bud asked me, you say you learned a lot from John. What did John teach you? You know? So he was probing me because John had the wisdom about the game that was just impeccable, really. And so it was a great year, but I knew I was coming in to play. And Chuck Noll had indicated that when he drafted me, you know, and he said this, I thought he was just talking crap. He said, you know, we're about one player from the Super Bowl. And they say, we get one defensive back, we can win. And I said, yeah, you know, well, you tell all your number one draft choice that. But when I look back, I guess that's what happened because I was only new face on the defense, really.
And JT, you mentioned L.C. Greenwood, and we were blessed to have L.C. on the show a few times before we lost him.
Mm-hmm.
And he told the story about he and Joe Green, you know, how they would sit in the meeting rooms and the coaches would be up there going over the film and drawing things up and doing the X's and the O's, and that, you know, the two of them didn't pay any attention to that stuff. LC said football's an easy game. See the football, tackle the guy with the football. None of that other stuff makes any difference. Is that consistent with what you remember about being in
well,
the
you know, they may have said that maybe when Chuck was coming in, and Chuck was normally adding tidbits, but these guys were very much knowledgeable of the game with George Prolis. George Prolis was a great coach, just I guess kind of an intimidating type coach, but he was fun-loving, and these guys were very smart. You know, they knew the game very well. As you notice, a lot of the rule changes came out of, you know, matter of fact, when they took out the head slap and the bump and run rule, I think Chuck was very upset in the meeting, and I was told that Chuck walked out because most of the rule change and the film clipping were the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Oakland Raiders, and Chuck said, well, what is this? And Pete Rozelle said, you know, it's not a good thing for Pittsburgh to be in the Super Bowl every year. It's bad for business. So those front four had mastered the head slap, and, you know, obviously Deacon Jones, those guys back was mastered at it also, but those four guys was very good, and also the bump and run. We played a lot of bump and run, and so basically those rule changes were made by great players, but also great coaches was a part of that too.
And JT, our good friend and former Patriots Bowl running back Tony Collins told the story to us about seeing Jack Lambert smoking cigarettes in the locker room before the game and at halftime of the Pro Bowl that he played in. And that's not the first time that we've heard that story. Was that true? Did you see a lot of that?
Well, yeah. You know, let me tell you something, and this is probably, I blow a lot of people's mind about this. Our culture was smoking. Matter of fact, in the still a locker room, every locker had a ashtray on it. And day of the game, now I was a pipe smoker. I had 100 pipes, so I smoked pipes. But the day of the game, guys are getting dressed for games. Bradshaw had a cigar, rocked a cigarette. John Stallworth was a chain smoker. At halftime, matter of fact, the entire front four smoked. At halftime, you would have the front four smoking cigarettes while we make an adjustment. Coach is smoking. Jack Lamb would have two. He had one in his mouth and one behind his ear. And obviously, I couldn't light my pipe up because that would have been too cool, at halftime smoking a pipe. But no, but that was the culture. It was. And now, obviously, they don't smoke, but it was just part of the culture. It was very natural to smoke before the game, after the game. But I think we had a rule in our playbook that if smoking affects your performance, obviously you shouldn't smoke. But I think Chuck was aware of that, but our conditioning level was so, off the chain and gruesome, but then I wonder if we had not smoked, what we would have done.
Bobby, more for JT?
JT, I was wondering, I know you played cornerback and also you did a little work at safety, and I was wondering, do you think a very talented defensive back in any era, JT, can effectively go between the two positions, or is it too specialized these days?
I think a cornerback can go to safety. I don't think too many safeties can go to cornerback. And understand, I have played in college. I played both cornerback and safety, and I got thrown in the safety when Mike Wagner was hurt, and I was the guy. I guess on a Monday Night Football, I got kind of thrown into the game. Yeah, I think a cornerback can. Yes. You had a guy like Rod Woodson, another great cornerback that also went into safety. So for a cornerback, it's easier because he's not on the island. It's not the same pressure. And so basically, I think the transition for a cornerback is pretty easy,
And finally, JT, after the magical run in Pittsburgh, you spent your last season in Denver. That was the Joe Collier defenses of that day in Denver. Did you go out under your own terms? Did you feel comfortable spending that last year in Denver? Talk to us about that final season.
No, well, in Denver I was fine. I was kind of shocked when I was traded from Pittsburgh. Basically, I think I was shocked because basically, if you're beaten out, that's one thing. But I think the fact that you have to go back a few years before that. Ron Johnson came in, and 1 year I was sick. I had sarcoidosis, and Ron came in, and the year I came back, they drafted Ron primarily to fill my void. And what people don't know, Ron was on the draft list of the Steelers, but he wasn't the number one draft choice. I had a gag on that year. I knew the year before ironically, we were going to Denver to play, and I found out, I had this flare up, and I found out I probably wouldn't play in the following year. So I had a gag on not to say, even off season, not to, mention that I wasn't going to play by the Steelers, and the Steelers had indicated, well, don't say anything because we don't want you to, but we'll pay your contract, and if you don't come back able to play, what we'll do, we will give you a job in the front office. So what happened, I found out that year I was off doing with the scouting department that year. Ron was targeted for like a fifth round safety, but when I got sick and they had to replace me, Johnson moved up to the number one spot. And so actually, you can understand the guys in the secondary saying, what the heck are we drafting the number one DB? I know Mel thought he was getting traded. Mike Wagner, Glenn Eric was done. He said, Donnie Shell. And I knew, and I felt bad that whole off season, not being able to tell them that I wasn't going to play, and they wouldn't be traded. But the problem when I returned that year, I got my job back, and there were just too many guys after Super Bowl 14 in the secondary, and I'm obviously looking for more money on the contract situation, and so I was, expendable, and it was tough because I wanted to retire here. And the reason I was, traded, was never justified, in my being traded to Denver, because it never materialized. That's the reason why. This is why, Chuck told me, I never forget this. The only time Chuck never looked in my eyes is when Chuck always stared in the eyes. He was looking down, talking to me during the whole process about this opportunity for me, et cetera, that I was being pressured somewhat in the defense, and he never looked at me. So I knew then, that was part of, the game of politics and of sports and the money situation too. But Denver was great because I think going to Denver, I got a new perspective about life, and I was kind of prepared myself more so for retirement, And I think by going to Denver, I saw some things there with some of the players, what they were doing, that really kind of triggered my interest in the restaurant industry. So I ended up, when I did retire, I went from a Chinese restaurant to Burger King to doing Applebee's about 20-some-odd years at Applebee's Neighborhood Grill and More restaurant. So if I hadn't gone to Denver, I don't think I would have gotten into the restaurant industry. So I like Denver.
JT, getting back to, leading up to the trade or being traded, did that impact your relationship with the organization after you left and after you retired? Or how is the relationship now with the organization?
I tell you what, it was very interesting. The year I came back and retired from Denver, they were honoring Chuck Noll as at the Dapper Dan here, and I walked into the reception there prior to the banquet, and Chuck saw me, and his eyes had a gleam and a glow, kind of reluctant, not knowing what I was going to say. So I went over and I hugged him. I said, "What's happened, Jazzy Chaz?" And obviously, I think what happened at that time, and more so when he gave his presentation, he included me in his presentation. So I think at that point in time there was some, relief, and he felt relief that the trade had not, dampened the relationship, because I know damn well he had not planned to put me in his speech. He didn't know I was coming, I don't think, to this thing. And, and obviously once you're a Steeler, you're a Steeler for the most part, so no, it did not dampen that relationship at all. Matter of fact, it's just one of those things that you're part of the family. And I think, it was a sad thing, that I left for. But even Franco, he got traded. He went to Seattle. I don't think any of our guys on that team actually, only a few of them retired. Even L.C. Greenwood. I mean, he left here. His last photo was with a shoebox in his hand. But I think what happened. I know what happened during that time. I think the Steelers Dan Rooney admitted that, when they traded guys the way they did, they made a mistake because they thought that it would continue. So when Bill Cowher came in, that was an effort to get those guys back because they cut them all off. Most of the guys from that era really for a few years had nothing to do with the team. So when Bill Cowher came in, they had this dinner with all the new rookies. And what they would do, their rookie draft team of that year, they would have dinner with all the vets, and they would invite the vets from my era. Case in point, myself, Mel Blount, Donnie Shell, we would eat with all the defensive backs. So by position, they brought these players back in, and what they admitted that they thought that the tradition would just perpetuate itself, but it didn't. So all those players came back and were actually reunited through that process and really re-engaged. And they have kept us engaged since that time.
JT, looking ahead to this coming season, most of the questions around the Steelers are really centered around the defense, in particular the linebackers and the defensive backs. Do you think that they have the defensive talent? Did they plug the gaps that they needed to plug? Because obviously that the way the season ended last year against Jacksonville has left a sour taste, I think, in every Steelers fan.
Well, I think for the last 6 or 7 years, if you go back even to Polamalu, I think where they lack the ability to go all the way is in the secondary. When you look at a defensive ball club, I mean, you can pick the Super Bowl every year. There's a prototype, what I'm going to say, outline that you need to win. In order to win a Super Bowl offensively, you have to have at least 2 all-pro caliber wide receivers on offense. You have to have an all-pro quarterback and 1 all-pro running back. Defensively, you must have a front four or a front seven that can control the line of scrimmage, and you must have two all-pro caliber defensive backs in the secondary. And if you go and look at all the teams that win for the last 50-some-odd years, for the most part, you see that. And you look at the Steelers, they have the offensive team to win. They have the all-pro wide receiver. They may have three. They have a quarterback and a running back. What they don't have and haven't had in a few years is that front four, that seven to control the line of scrimmage, and they haven't had those two all-pro defensive backs, be it a cornerback, safety, or you must have that. And if you take that template, most Super Bowls can be picked on that. Matter of fact, that's how I've been picking them for the last 30-something years. Too bad I know bet. A gambler, I would own the city of Pittsburgh. Yeah, so I think the Steelers have not filled the gap in the secondary. And it's been that way for even when you had Palomar and Ike Taylor, you still didn't have. I think the last secondary that had that ingredients were Cornell Lake and Rod Woodson, and they haven't had that since that time. So yeah, I think it's going to be very tough unless they fill that. I mean, the linebacker or lineman, where they can actually control the line of scrimmage, and they get two all-pro guys that they really can kind of can shut down a few people, be it a wide receiver or a tight end.
JT, over the last week or so, we've heard stuff come from James Harrison talking about Mike Tomlin. He isn't disciplined enough with the team, and that's the gap between the Steelers and the Patriots. And from a distance, as a Steelers fan, I may tend to agree with him. It sort of looks that way. But your thoughts, do you think that's the case, or do you think it's just sour grapes from Harrison?
No, Mike is a quasi throwback to the old era, but at the same time, he's dealing with this millennium mindset, and I think the head coach role today is a little different. You're not only a head coach leader, but you have to be almost a what should I say, a friend, almost friendly with them. And I'm not saying you be unfriendly, but I think it's a tough balancing act, and I think he does a great job. Where he can actually communicate with them, yet command their respect, and he does. Now, James Harrison could be, it could be sour grapes with him. I'm not sure what the case is. But I don't think that's the case. But I think the role of the head coach has changed from the time for all head coaches, except probably in New England. I think there's only one team that I would think is a real throwback team. That's why they're winning, New England. I think Belichick controls every aspect of the game. Okay. When I was playing, the head coach runs the show. I don't think the head coach today's job is to run the show. I think what he does is to make sure the guys are quasi-happy and productive. Because in my day, if a guy screwed up, Bradshaw, Franco, you get jerked out the game. Today, I think the front office, and it's JT's perspective, runs the game because if I got a guy that I'm paying $30, $40 million, I can't take him off the game. And I think because of that, guys not afraid to be taken out. Mel Blount was yanked out on national TV in our first championship game against the Oakland Raiders because he wasn't covering Cliff Branch as well on national TV. And Mel was upset about it, and I'll never forget Bud Carson. I was in New Orleans at the Super Bowl, and Mel was telling the media he was upset about it. And Bud Carson, came up to us and said, well, Mel, you know what? If you screw up again in the Super Bowl, we say, I'll yank your ass again. So I think you don't have that today. So I think because the money has changed, the control and who plays, and I don't think the guys feel threatened because, I can get beat 6-7 times and go to the Pro Bowl. When I was playing, if you gave up 3 touchdowns a year, that was the limit. Chuck, had you thinking you may be traded, or he'll ask you, can you play in this league? Can you play for us if you give up 3 touchdowns? So that was the limit. So it's a different game now, I think, and I think the economics kind of dictated more so than the head coach does with the players. So it's a balancing act there. You got a player making more than the coach, and can I bench him? No, because it's a marketing thing today. So the money has changed the game from that respect.
JT, before we let you go, now you reminded us that you're in the coffee business now with Crazy Mocha. How can our listeners find out more information about the coffee business you're in and keep track of what you're doing, whether it's online or over social media?
Well, it's two ways. You can go to Facebook, obviously, Crazy Mocha, and type in Crazy Mocha Hill District, because I'm in the Hill District of Pittsburgh. Okay, and we're located at Crazy Mocha, the Hill District, and find out what's going on. And you can go to my Facebook page and find out what's going on with me. Yeah.
Well, JT, we can't thank you enough for taking time out of your night to come back and be a part of the show. So many things Bob and I would love to get your thoughts and insights on, plus more of your memories from being a part of the Steelers organization. We hope you'll come back and do it again soon. You're fantastic.
Feel free to call me.
A lot of fun. Thank you.
Well, we appreciate that very much. JT, take care. All the best to you and your family. We look forward to having you back on again soon.
Take care.
Great. Thank you, buddy. Good night.
That is former Steelers Pro Bowl defensive back JT Thomas. And Bob, obviously we got so many stories and things that happened with that wonderful Steelers organization from the winning those Super Bowls, and Craig Colquitt about to join us, talk about more of those from his perspective as well. But boy, it sure is wonderful having JT as part of the show.
Yeah, and we have a lot of good things as far as the coaching. The way it's so much different, I think you made a great point with the millennium mindset. That's pretty cool, Chris. But we can pick his brain more about that and about his ex-teammates and et cetera the next time he comes on. That was a lot of fun.
Yes, it was. All right, like I say, we've got our next guest, Craig Colquitt, hanging on the line. We're going to get to Craig on the other side of these words about Doubleback Winery.
Former NFL quarterback Drew Bledsoe, owning a winery has been a long-time aspiration that would allow him to combine his passion for fine wines and love of his hometown, the Walla Walla Valley. Drew returned in 2007 to plant his original estate vineyard, McQueen, on the southern end of the Walla Walla Valley. The following year, Drew launched Doubleback, an estate-focused winery with the goal to produce world-class Cabernet Sauvignon. Since the very first release, the 2007 Cabernet Sauvignon, Doubleback has received numerous accolades, including a spot on the Wine Inspector's Top 100 list. Drew's vision, brought to life by winemaker Josh McDaniels, remains to be a premium wine experience, completely focused on quality. To further assist the vision of high quality, estate-focused wine, Drew has acquired and planted 4 estate vineyards in the Walla Walla Valley, and recently broke ground on the future home of Doubleback Winery, which will open in 2018. Drew is committed to using only the most sustainable, superlative winemaking practices to ensure that Doubleback will be one of the best bottles of wine you will drink. We invite you to learn more about Doubleback and sign up for our mailing list at doubleback.com. That's doubleback.com.
You're listening to Thursday Night Tailgate with Chris Mascaro and Bob Lazari, where NFL legends live on. Back to you, boys.
It means a lot.
And now back with us here on Thursday Night Tailgate is our next guest, former Steelers punter Craig Colquitt. Let me remind you about Craig's background. He's from Knoxville, Tennessee, played his college ball at the University of Tennessee, became their punter from 1975 to 1977. And in 1976 and 77, he was named to the All-SEC team. His senior season, he was second in the nation in average yards per punt at 44.7 yards. He was drafted in the 3rd round by the Pittsburgh Steelers in 1978, and he kicked in the NFL from 78 to 1987 for the Steelers and the Colts. Helped the Steelers win back-to-back Super Bowl championships in 78 and 79. In 2009, he was inducted into the Greater Knoxville Sports Hall of Fame, and we are honored that he is back with us again tonight here on Thursday Night Tailgate. Hey, Craig, Chris, and Bob, thanks for coming back on the show.
Hi, Craig.
Hey, Chris and Bob, thanks for the invitation. I appreciate it. That was awesome listening to JT. It's amazing. I can be around some of the guys and look at them and I say, yeah, we're getting older, but I can close my eyes and listen to the voices, and there's something about our voices that don't change. That JT's always been an entrepreneur. That was fun to listen to. I'm not surprised. He reached out to me this week, and now we're friends on Facebook. I look forward to seeing him in the near future.
And Craig, to that end, I was curious to get your memories. I know that you guys had a couple of seasons together there at the tail end of those championship years. You're coming in, and JT had a couple of years before he moved on and then retired. But what do you remember about watching JT?
JT's just one of those people that was all over the field. I think he's a reflection of Chuck Noll and the scouting ability that the combine had at that time and before free agency too. The mindset back then was the team lasts as long as you can for the team concept. So everybody, it was just such a unit. In fact, the first round draft choice, Ron Johnson, died 2 Tuesdays ago. And, as soon as I heard it, I didn't have an immediate reaction, but then all of a sudden it just hit me. Ron Johnson, his first round draft choice my year in 78. We even had a little nucleus, but, JT, Ron Johnson, they were defensive backs, and I just loved hanging around those guys and listening to them. But JT added another element of being this entrepreneur. I think he was in the Burger King and maybe Wendy's business back then, and I remember him telling me too, he didn't sleep 4 hours a night because he had too much brain energy. Just an incredible guy, but an incredible football player too.
And Craig, a couple of weeks ago, as I was looking down your Twitter feed, you tweeted out that Jack Lambert was your defensive hero. He was mine, one of my favorite defensive players of all time as well. But, talk about, what you remember about Lambert and why he was your defensive hero.
Jack, he set the tone of a game. He was for everybody. Everybody kind of looked to Jack to get everything going because, Jack was, 6'5", 228-pound linebacker. You should have been paying a forward in the NBA and slow as Christmas. But his instincts and his drive just to own the ball was, he was Terry Bradshaw on the defense. Just one of those guys that made a huge difference. So JT the same way. It was just fun to watch. Sometimes it was hard to watch because they punished everybody. You're not going to do this against the Steelers kind of attitude. So for me, it was a men's football team.
And Craig, kind of bringing it back, to you got drafted by the Steelers in the 3rd round, which is very high and very rare for a punter. Were you surprised that you got drafted that high? Were you expecting to go, towards the top half of the draft? And did that put added pressure on you to prove why you got drafted so high?
Yeah, good question. Number one, no, I never anticipated being drafted that high. But when I was drafted that high and into that organization, to me, it was relaxing. And how I can say that is, it was almost like I felt honored, if that makes sense, that they would do that. They would spend a choice like that on me. In fact, my feelings were hurt when I got to Pittsburgh at camp. There were 5 other punters there. So, I was going, man, I thought I had this job in the bag. Now I'm going to have to work for it. But, no, it was 2 ways of thinking. I thought I'd be 12th round. I think that was the last round at that time. But, it was exciting, just exciting. I think I told you last time I wanted to be actually a Cowboy, but when Pittsburgh drafted me and the PR director, Joe Gordon, called me and told me who was on the team, like Jack Lambert, Terry Bradshaw, and Franco Harris, and went through all these names, I said, wow, I didn't think of it that way. So it was a great place to be. So I can go back to that before free agency, concept. That's Chuck Noll fit that perfect. He knew how to build that dynasty.
Bob, questions for Craig?
It's good to speak with you again, Craig. I'll ask you what I asked JT about that first training camp in Latrobe, Pennsylvania. More memories from yourself. Talk about the facilities. What do you most remember from those weeks you spent in Latrobe?
Well, the main thing I remember is how many people were there when they finally opened up the practices to the public. Because I didn't have a feel for what it would be like in that kind of environment, in the professional environment. Because at University of Tennessee, the only crowd I saw was game day, or the orange and white game. But when they opened the practices up to Pittsburgh, there was 10, 15,000 people there. And if there was a loud hit or somebody cutting up, it was people were standing up, giving ovations. It was an amazing event. And everybody was so close as a group. It's hard to describe that to people, what a football team environment's like. If you all played on teams where everybody's just so close anyway, but then to be in that kind of limelight, it was humbling, but it was exciting too. My head grew quite a bit.
Craig, you got that first year in the league. You were able to spend it with Roy Gerela. If I'm not mistaken, that was his last year in Pittsburgh. We were so familiar with him, and Chris remembers the Gerela's Gorillas, and it was just electrical back in the day. What was the time like that you spent with him? And tell us more about what kind of guy he was.
That's really good too. Roy was critical to me fitting in there, because Roy he would talk, but if he said something, it was usually I needed to listen. He put it all into perspective, because he'd seen it all. He'd, been very successful and, had the bad games and had the crowd on him and against him. So he was able to help me make it through that mental transition, which is now getting paid to play. And so Roy was critical. He was a godsend for me to fit into the game.
And Craig, you not only punted, but you were the holder as well on field goals. So I was curious, what were the worst conditions that you ever had to hold in? Because I imagine some of the, frigid and rainy and snowy games in Pittsburgh, and when you were on the road late in the season, made it pretty challenging to catch and place the ball down properly and quickly, particularly with the game on the line.
Oh, yeah. You did not know what you were going to get in Pittsburgh. One of my favorite stories, though, is an away game, and it was actually exhibition. We rode buses to Cleveland and back when we played in Cleveland. Went to Cleveland on a Friday to play an exhibition game in Cleveland, and I hadn't seen any good weather in Cleveland my career so far. Get to Cleveland on the Friday, it was 82 degrees, not a cloud in the sky, beautiful. And I'm going, great, we're going to have a good game finally in Cleveland. Wake up the next day, the rain is coming in sideways. It's like 62 degrees. Wind is crazy, and the field was a mud bath. So you didn't know. And Pittsburgh could be the same way. Fortunately, we were on artificial turf, but you had to be careful. Artificial turf for falling down, and that's kind of what ended Roy Gerela's career. The slipperiness of the turf, he couldn't muster that, how much of a dramatic lean he came in to the ball. So, but yeah, it was when in Knoxville, the coldest game I probably ever played in was 43 degrees. In Pittsburgh, it could be 17 with snow. So you just don't know. You know how it is.
Mm-hmm. And Craig, we're so familiar with teams trying to ice the kicker, but I have to imagine it has to impact you as well as the holder, because now you got time to think about having to catch the ball and put it down, and boy, don't mess this up, and the negative thoughts start creeping in. I would imagine in your head as the holder, just like it would have with Matt Barr or Roy Jarrell or those guys having to make that kick. So during those timeouts, what's going through your head? What are you trying to do so the pressure doesn't get to you as the holder?
For me, no, I did not even talk to these guys. I mean, Roy Jarrell, Gary Anderson, Matt Barr, Dave Trout, I held for 4 different kickers, and those guys went into a zone. I knew not to talk to them, so I had to think about, how can I make it through the next 15 seconds? So, but it was easier because I knew even if I screwed up, they'd blame it on the kicker. So I was good with
that. Bob, more for Craig?
And Craig, I had referred to you at the beginning of the show. The Colquitt crew was the first family of NFL punters. We know about your sons and how talented they were. And talk more about their upbringing, Craig. I mean, did they play a lot of soccer? It wasn't like you forced them to become NFL punters. Was it just a natural progression, having seen what you did?
It was that. Dustin really, with the Chiefs, in fact, I'm in Kansas City now, camp for him, and Britton started yesterday. But I did the football thing. Britton played football his sophomore and senior year. Dustin didn't play till his senior year, but really what happened is there was no interest coming towards them for soccer. But I could tell Dustin and Britton, just for their natural athletic ability, they could learn what I did, but more than that they could handle the crowd, the pressure. They like that kind of atmosphere. Their egos are huge, and I mean that humbly. They really love what they do. I knew they wanted to perform in front of a crowd. So I knew there came a time when I went, I want to spend time with this. And I pushed them because they didn't smell it at first, but when they got a smell of it at the University of Tennessee, they wanted to see how far they could take it. So I pushed it too hard only when I knew I needed to pull it back.
And how about your nephew, Jimmy, Craig? He punted in '85 with Seattle as well, and spent a year in the league. You must be so proud of all these guys. It's just a freak thing how 3 close relatives can all be in the same league.
Yeah, and that's a good thing to say anyway. I tell people all the time, you don't know who's in your house. You don't know who you're bringing up, and you don't know who's watching. So be a good example, because Dustin and Britton told me, people were always talking about my background, and I played, and Jimmy, my nephew, the same thing. So it was a blessing that they were paying closer attention than I thought. And Jimmy probably was the strongest of all of us. He's 6'4" and 200. I think he was like 220 something pounds in college. But I think as far as in front of a paying crowd or being paid to do it, it might have been a little bit tougher for Jimmy. We hadn't figured that one out yet. We talk about it, but we hadn't figured out why he wasn't able to cross that line.
Craig, just a couple more before we let you go. And speaking of your alma mater, the University of Tennessee, wanted to get your thoughts on them for this upcoming season. Last year was a bit of a struggle. They went 4-8, didn't win a game in the SEC. How do you feel about where that program is at in this upcoming season?
Well, it kind of goes back to the Jack Lambert thing. I played defensive end. I had so much more fun on defense than I did as a running back. So there's something about the defensive mind that I really enjoy, and Pruitt is a defensive mindset, and I think, he's got a couple of championships or 3 championships, I think, under his belt. His dad was a coach, so he's used to winning, and that's what Tennessee needs to feel and taste again. So I know I'm more involved now than I've ever been. So I'm looking forward to the rebirth of the Big Orange.
And Craig, we partner with the NFL Alumni Association, and they recently tweeted out a story about how your grandson got you to go from stretching your punting leg to stretching your imagination, which is referencing your book, JoJo, What Happened to Your Hair. Do you mind sharing that story and then reminding our listeners about your book?
Oh, I appreciate that very much. Yeah, Britton, when he was playing with the Broncos, I was out in Denver enjoying a breakfast with his son, his oldest son. He was, I think, 4 years old at the time. And out of the blue, he just said, "Hey, JoJo, what happened to your hair?" And, well, first I was a little bit offended. You hate to see something go off the body. But I went, I need to do something with this. And as time went along and, I didn't work with the company I was working with anymore, and I decided, what, I'm going to reinvent myself. So I went with the publishing side of it and developed a children's book called JoJo, What Happened to Your Hair? And I've got it on CraigColquitt.com, and it's selling well. I'd like it to be a New York Times bestseller, but that's not going to happen, but I've met so many people because of that. In fact, I'm right now formed a group to go into Christian film, production, and really excited about that. So the book, CraigColquitt.com, is just a really fun thing to do. I did the artwork too, and the writing in it, the text. So I appreciate you talking about that.
Absolutely. And Craig, let our listeners know, how can they stay up to date with all the great things that you're doing over social media as well?
I'm on Twitter and I'm on Facebook. CraigColquitt.com is my website, and I'm right now I've got some old blogs in there, but now with this new venture into films, I'm going to flex my muscles on my website a little bit and reach out about what we're doing as a group. So I've met some tremendous people, and we got a great idea for a first film. So, CraigColquitt.com, and I'll start putting out a lot of information going forward.
Well, Craig, it has been really wonderful, having you back on the show again with us tonight and getting to know you over the last several months. And we hope you'll continue to come back and share more of your stories and your insights for what's going on around, whether it's Tennessee football, the Steelers, and keeping us updated on the movies and the other things that you're getting involved with. It's been a real pleasure getting to know you and having you back tonight.
Thanks, Chris and Bob. I appreciate it. Go Vols, go Chiefs, Browns, and Steelers. It's hard for me to keep up. There it is.
Let's spread it out.
Thank you, Craig. Take care. All the best to you and your family. We look forward to catching up again soon.
Thanks, guys. God bless you. See you.
Bye. Thank you.
See you, Craig. That is former Volunteers and Steelers punter Craig Colquitt. What a great guy, Bob. I enjoy having him on the show. He's a lot of fun.
It's still boggles my mind how that many family members could have made it to the NFL. 2 sons, that's just uncharted territory, because punters like that and a nephew that did the same, and they were all very good. And so they could probably make a lot of money in a different career just raising punters, right?
Indeed. All right, folks, coming up here in hour number 2 on Thursday Night Tailgate, we're going to be joined by Wendell Davis and Ron Lippock. And before Wendell joins us, I want to give a shout-out to our friends over at the Gridiron Greats organization. Folks, please help support a wonderful cause that's taking care of the guys who left so much of themselves out on the field. And remember, these are the guys who played back when they still had to get off-season jobs to support themselves and their families. It's organizations like this one that was started by Mike Ditka, again, the Gridiron Greats, that are there trying to help the guys we all grew up watching and reading about. Please go online to gridirongreats.org to see how you can get involved. All right, now back in making his 6th appearance with us on Thursday Night Tailgate is former Bears wide receiver Wendell Davis. Let me remind you about Wendell's background. He's from Shreveport, Louisiana, played his college ball at LSU, where he remains 2nd all-time in receiving yards and 5th in touchdown receptions, 11th in yards from scrimmage. He helped them get to 3 straight bowl games from 1985 to 1987 and a win in the 87 Gator Bowl and a number 5 ranking. Wendell was inducted into the LSU Athletics Hall of Fame back in 2011. He was a first-round draft pick by the Chicago Bears in 1988, the 27th overall selection, and he played in the NFL from 88 to 1993, all in Chicago. Over the course of that time, he had 207 receptions for an even 3,000 yards and 14 touchdowns, and we are honored to have him back with us again tonight here on Thursday Night Tailgate. Hey, Wendell, Chris, and Bob, thanks for coming back on the show.
Hey, Wendell.
Hey, Chris and Bob, how are you guys? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you. That's great.
Okay.
So,
great.
Wendell, catch us up. How have you been, my friend? It's been a little while since we've had you on the show.
You know, it has been a while. I still follow you guys, though, but it's been a while. I'm doing well. Doing well, man. They got an empty nest, you know, and just taking it day by day, living life.
Yeah,
you're good.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
So,
how about you?
Wendell, I want to start off our time with you by getting your thoughts on your alma mater, LSU. They were in the mix last season in the SEC West, finished a game behind Alabama and Auburn, but handed Auburn their only conference loss of the season. Now you're heading into this one without last year's starting quarterback Danny Etling, who got drafted by the Patriots, and Darius Juice. He's no longer there at running back either. He's now a part of the NFL. So I'm curious to get your thoughts. How do you feel about their chances this season?
I feel good about their chances. I'm excited. I'm excited about Coach O. I think he did a great job last year in bringing the team together. I think we have a great opportunity to have a 10-win season. We haven't done that in a while, so I'm looking forward to it. You know, I'm excited about our defense, the offense. I want to say I'm excited about. I'm excited in a way that one of my coach Sullivan was my receiver coach when I was there at LSU, and he's actually back at LSU helping. So I'm excited to see what he's going to do with those receivers. But I'm excited about this season. I think they'll do really well.
And Wendell, we all know about the kind of big rivalry between LSU and Alabama. I'm curious what it was like for you during LSU Alabama week. What's it like on the campus of LSU when it's Alabama week?
Very focused. Very focused. I know for the players and coaches, it was a very focused week. Everything you did when you went into the chalkboard, the classroom, I mean, it was quiet. Everybody was focused. Everybody held each other. We held each other accountable every day up until that game. And especially if that game was played in Death Valley. But it was a very focused time, and you really didn't have relief until after the game. I mean, everybody was focused until after that game because we knew what Alabama was bringing. They always bring their A game. There's never a time when I was at LSU that that was an easy game. It's always been a tough game. It's always been a big rivalry. It's now that I struggle. I struggle right now because they got the upper hand on us right now. We just haven't been able to. We can have a great season going. I mean, we can be putting together back-to-back wins. And I get to Alabama, I get tight, man. And sometimes we look good, and sometimes we look really bad. But I got a good feeling about this year, guys.
And Wendell, while you were at LSU, you guys had a couple of opportunities at a national title. 86, 87, you guys had really good seasons. You got to the Sugar Bowl in 86 against Nebraska. 87, you guys start out 7-0-1, and the one was a tie with number 7 Ohio State, and then you run into Alabama that year. Did you feel like you had it? Was one of those the one that got away? Did you feel better about 86 or 87? Did they both bother you? Which was the one you thought, boy, we got a shot at a ring here?
You know, the one that really bothered me was the second one. Because the first one, you know, I say, all right, we had an opportunity, and we after that, it's like, okay, we're going to get back there. We're going to get back and give ourselves another opportunity. And we did. And we didn't make it happen. And that really bothered me. You know, we played some great teams. We were ranked in the top 10, played great schools, and we just couldn't deliver it in the end. And, you know, I can go back and make excuses, but we just didn't do it, you know. We didn't do it. And it bothered me that we didn't get that second opportunity that we had, because we worked so hard. We worked so hard all season, all off season after that first time. And we worked hard as a team. Each guy was dedicated to getting back and putting ourselves in a position to go for a national championship. And you know, we didn't make it happen. So that second one was tough for me.
Bob, questions for Wendell?
Great to speak with you again, my friend. And we're talking a lot about first training camps, Wendell. And first of all, can you imagine it's been 30 years since your first?
Wow,
that's incredible when you think about it, right?
Bob, you just gave me a headache.
30. That's just my goodness. But you know, I'm looking at a lot of the details of that camp. You know, Platteville, Wisconsin, Mike Ditka, smash mouth offense, man, not for the faint of heart. Take us back, Wendell, when you first pulled up to that facility, man. It must have been something.
Well, you know, it was. I was excited to be there first, right? As a rookie, you just excited and you want to get there and you want to be able to show what you can do and blend in with the team and, you know, become part of the team. But I tell you guys, you go to Platteville, Wisconsin, you've been there. The only thing there is Platteville, the college, man. And the town was great. It had a small little town, but that's the only thing there. You know, everything else was just fields and cows. But when you get there, you're excited as a rookie. I remember as a rookie, I was excited. And man, we started two-a-days. And it seemed like it was forever. I thought, I mean, I must have thought I was there for at least 2-3 months. And when I say two-a-days, it's two-a-days, full pads, and you banging each other, you know. And it just lasted forever. And it's like when at that last, I just remember my rookie year, that last two-a-day, the last practice, it felt like I was just. We got on the road so fast. Everybody was speeding down the road, man. I think we had a few guys get tickets because they were going so fast, trying to get out of there. But I tell you, it was a tough time. But at the end of the day, you know, that's when you come together as a team. You do all your work there. But it's a little different these days. These guys, they don't do that two-a-days like we used to do it back in the day.
In that first season, Wendell, you got into every game. You didn't really start many games, but was there any frustration in the fact that you only could come up with 15 receptions that year? Or did you learn a lot? And did you have to just do your time behind guys like Dennis McKinnon and those guys?
Yeah. It was a little bit of both. I understood my role at the time, but I was frustrated. I had to kind of wait my time, but it was very frustrating in the sense that we were doing what we call, we have two guys start the game. They will start and then they'll play a series and they'll come out and then we'll go in. I'll go in and play a position. They come out and, play a series and come out. And that was kind of frustrating. And I couldn't get in a rhythm. I wasn't used to that, especially coming from LSU where, we throwing the ball all over the field, and I was playing almost every play. And then to come in and, as a first rounder having a split time, it was frustrating. But, I had to do what I had to do. But I tell you what, that next year I went up to Coach Dickens' office, and he wanted to know if I was going to stay around for the off season and work out. And I told him, I was going to stay around, but I can't do this this part-time thing, man. I just couldn't get in a rhythm. And he understood. And the next year, I got in more. I started. And, I wasn't in for just a series. I was probably in for probably most of the half or whatever, most of the quarter, but it was on a more consistent basis. So in the beginning, it was frustrating, but I got through it.
And when the Bears drafted you, they were 2 seasons removed from being one of the most dominant teams of all time, that 85 Bears team. But many of the same players were still there. The Bears defense was still ranked number 1. So I was curious, when you show up as a rookie in training camp, how do you go about trying to make a name for yourself when you're playing up against those guys?
You go very hard, man. And playing against them guys, that's when the 46 defense. Richard had Mike Singletary, they had Frizz, they had McMichael. Dan Hampton was in his last year. Dave Duerson, Sean Gale. They pretty much had that whole defense there. And going against those guys, man, it made me a better player, I tell you that. But it was scary and exciting at the same time, I guess. To see Mike Singletary eyes looking at you, when you're coming across the middle, that's not a great feeling, man. It was interesting. I was really lucky because that year we were one game away from the Super Bowl.
Right.
My rookie year, we were one game away from the Super Bowl. We almost made it that year, and actually, that year they kept probably the most rookies they've ever kept on a football team. That year, I think it was like 13 of us out of the rookie class made that squad. But great times.
Yeah. So, Wendell, when you're in training camp going up against those guys, right? And are they trying to get in your head? Is there some rookie hazing going on, or at least trying to intimidate the rookie?
Oh, of course. That's part of the game, You get a little bit of that in college when you come in as a freshman, but when you come in the NFL, you got guys, that they play those mind games on you, man. You think they're not thinking about it, but they're thinking about it. And, they might have somebody on the other side of the, like the other cornerback. So it was Vesty Jackson. I'm on his side, but, I got another guy over here talking crap to me, saying what Vesty Jackson said. It's a team effort when they try to get in a rookie team. It goes, to me as a receiver, you think it's just a defensive back. But no, it just goes through. You got the linemen, the D linemen talking noise out there to you. You got the linebackers talking to you. You got everybody talking to you, trying to get you. So, you got to get through it, though. You got to block it all out.
Wendell, just a couple more before we let you go. And the Bears drafted a couple of wide receivers, Anthony Miller out of Memphis, Javon Wims out of Georgia, plus they've added Allen Robinson from the Jaguars. We saw what they've got at running back. Jordan Howard had a great season last year. Tarek Cohen is a great 1-2 punch for them at running back. How do you feel about this offense, and what do you expect to see from them this season?
I think they should be more explosive. I think with Trubisky being their quarterback, I think he has with the year on his belt right now. I was really impressed with him. He looks like he really understands the game. He throws a good ball. So I think they should be explosive now. I'm hoping that they throw the ball downfield a lot more this year with the new weapons that they have. I mean, I think they've addressed that issue. They got somebody to go deep, take the top off, and then they also got somebody that can do the work in the middle. So I'm excited about the offense. And that running back, I think the two running backs they have right now are both explosive. I mean, you kind of like call them thunder and lightning if you like. And they work well together. They complement each other. And then, with the new head coach, we have to see what happens. Hopefully they respond to him. Sounds like in training camps, the guys like him. But I always say, I just want to see what happens when they take the first punch in the face. They starting out with Green Bay, and I'm sure Green Bay will punch them in the face. And I want to see how they respond. If they respond well, then I think we'd have a competitive season.
Wendell, remind our listeners what you're doing now.
Oh, you know me. I'm still. Well, I work with a steel company. I don't know if you remember. You guys remember Jim Osborne? He played with the Bears years ago.
Oh, yeah.
Jim Osborne played with the Bears years ago. I think he has the longest tenure with the Bears ever. But Jim Osborne and I work together. We work for a steel company. We're in the supply diversity company department here in Chicago. He brought me on, so I work under him. He's my director. I'm a manager in the supply diversity field. And I still I'm working on my software. What else am I doing? Oh, and I have a trucking business too. So
boy,
hey guys, you know me. I'm doing something every time you call.
Absolutely.
I try to stay busy.
So, Wendell, how can our listeners stay up to date with you? Are you out there on social media? How can they find you?
Not really. I hadn't been on social media much, been too busy. But I do have don't ask me my Twitter account. I don't know it. I don't know my Twitter handle. I don't know if they, on LinkedIn. They can do it LinkedIn. Just, yeah. But,
Well, Wendell, it's always a lot of fun having you as part of the show. We thank you so much for taking time out of your night to come back and join us. We hope you'll do it again very soon. Give us your thoughts on what you're seeing at LSU. Give us your thoughts on what you're seeing with the Bears and around the league, because we really appreciate, your opinion and your thoughts and insights.
Will do. I appreciate you guys. Thanks a lot for having me.
Take it easy, Wendell.
Take care,
right,
Wendell.
guys.
We'll catch up soon. All the best to you and your family.
Thank you very much.
That is former LSU and Chicago Bears wide receiver Wendell Davis. And Bob, he's been a wonderful friend of the show over the years that we've been doing it. Both, like you mentioned, on the radio side here and on the TV side as well. And his stories are fantastic. And for folks who don't remember, what a horrific injury ended his career. We'll never know what might have been, but a double knee injury playing at the Vet in Philly, and we've talked about that in the past with Wendell, but certainly cut a career short, which could have been a whole lot more, fulfilling for him and for Bears fans for sure.
Yeah, when Wendell was at the top of his game, Chris, averaging 15, 16 yards per catch, and if he might have been in another place where they threw the ball more, his stats would have doubled or tripled what they were. But a very talented guy, and but still enjoys talking about his days in Chicago. It's always a lot of fun.
All right, we've got our next guest, Ron Lippock, hanging on the line. We're going to get to Ron on the other side of these words from our friends over at DP Quality Foods.
Most folks are familiar with Dan Pastorini's accomplishments on the football field or in race cars. But what most don't know? Dan's family background in the restaurant business. For 37 years, Dan's parents, Dante and Dorothy, owned and operated Pastorini's Longhorn Restaurant. So the Pastorini family has a long history of making great tasting food from family recipes. Dan and his partners want to bring some of that to you with their Texas-style rub, Texas-style hickory rub, and their garlic and herb seasoning. First introduced back in 2011, Dan's Texas-style rub immediately began winning awards, taking home the first-place trophy for best ribs at the Pasadena Livestock Show and Barbecue Cook-Off. They did it again at the 2012 Texas Ranger Wounded Warrior Cook-Off, and the awards just keep on coming. Check out Dan's line of spices online at dpqualityfoods.com. That's dpqualityfoods.com. And take what you put on the grill to a whole new level.
Thursday Night Tailgate, where the spotlight is always on the positive. Tune in Thursday night from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time to hear your favorite NFL legends, players, and coaches sharing their stories. Now back to Chris and Bob.
I wouldn't joke about anything else that happened to you tonight.
All right, we are back here on Thursday Night Tailgate, and now making a return visit with us is author Ron Lippock. Let me remind you about Ron's background. He's written a wonderful book titled Steelers Takeaways, Players' Memories Through the Decades. It is available on Amazon.com, and in the book, he shares stories about several former Steelers that we've been blessed to have on this show, including tonight's guest, J.T. Thomas, plus TNT Hall of Famer Rocky Bleier and our wonderful friend Elsie Greenwood, who we miss dearly. Ron also publishes a newsletter called Pittsburgh Sports Daily Bulletin, and he has interviewed hundreds of former Pittsburgh athletes, coaches, and media members, and just about every living member of the Steelers organization. And we are excited he is back with us again tonight here on Thursday Night Tailgate. Hey, Ron, Chris, and Bob, thanks for coming back on the show.
Hey, Ron.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
So, Ron, I got to start off, getting your memories of J.T. Thomas, who joined us a little bit earlier in the show. What are some of your favorite J.T. Thomas stories?
Well, I think in the interview with JT that I did, and this was some time ago, he was so poignant and so just very deep. And what I really appreciated about JT was the sort of the notion that when the Steelers were close, they got close because of some ways that people weren't really aware of. I mean, they used to go to a party hosted by a doctor, and they had a priest who sort of got them all together. That team wasn't as unified early on and until all those sort of behind-the-scenes things happened. And JT really brought a lot of that to life to me, something I wasn't aware of. And so hearing JT talk about sort of the racial aspect of the times and how the Steelers were able to work through that and become a really unified team through these sort of side channels of conversation and just getting together was really fascinating to me.
And Ron, one of the things I read in your book was, L.C. Greenwood and how he credited Chuck Noll for bringing in a lot of guys from smaller schools, like L.C., who was from Arkansas Pine Bluff, and, Joe Green being from North Texas State, and Mel Brunt from Southern College, Lambert being from Kent State, just to name a couple of those guys. But, those guys all came in sort of with something to prove, feeling like, hey, we're not from the Penn States and the USCs and that sort of thing. So they sort of had a chip on their shoulder, it seemed like, when they got to training camp and became a member of the Steelers. Talk about Chuck's ability and the ability of their scouts to find the right players at some of the lesser-known schools.
Well, I think it sort of stepping back, I thought about this and why the Steelers were able to have the success they have and continue to. And I think a large part is because they're innovative. They don't get a lot of credit for that. So they bring in, Bill Nunn, who was sort of the architect behind that drafting of the guys that no other team was really looking at the time. And the reason for their ability to be innovative is because they had the trust of Art Rooney. And so I think really what started the whole Steelers piece of the whole Steelers dynasty was the trust that Art Rooney gave to Chuck Noll to say, look, you're safe. You're safe for a while. Do what you need to do. And that gave Chuck Noll the freedom to innovate. And he was an incredibly innovative guy. And I think he doesn't get enough credit for that. He brought in a strength and conditioning coach. He brought a weightlifter from the Olympics. He brought in a hypnotist. He brought in things that no one was aware of or no one really gives him credit for that really changed the whole landscape of that team. And part of that was the Bill Nunn going to those sort of smaller schools that historically black college universities. And that's something that a lot of people weren't doing. And he was able to do that because he was given the freedom to do that from the front office.
And Ron, like I say, in following you on Twitter and seeing the things that you tweet out and having, read the book, it seems like you have probably interviewed more former Steelers and the Steeler alumni than probably anybody. And in doing those interviews and writing the things that you wrote, did anyone ever say anything to you that really caught you off guard? Like, wow, really? I had no idea that happened.
Well, I think really it was more the guys that weren't happy with the Steelers. And there are a few of those. Roy Jefferson, who was traded away because he had a complete yelling match with Chuck Noll and told Noll to trade him because he didn't like the way the players were treated in camp. And one guy fell in 102-degree heat and passed out, and Roy Jefferson had enough and just went after Chuck Noll. And there's another story where I believe it was Richard Huntley who had some really negative things to say about Jerome Bettis. And so there's every once in a while you get these people who aren't happy with the environment. Jeremy Statt was another guy who was a second-round draft pick from the Steelers who had some issues with the way the Steelers ran their organization. He was sort of a political guy, and he didn't like some of the politics of the way the Steelers ran their organization. So those are the things that really catch my eye, are the people who speak to these really surprising, I didn't like it there, I wasn't appreciative of what happened there, because you hear so many good things, but not everyone has those great experiences.
Bob, questions for Ron?
Yeah, and Ron, you covered some of this already, but you talked to so many guys that had played for Noll, and you must get kind of a consensus on the guy as far as what he's like as a man and as a coach. If you had to kind of narrow everything down about his characteristics, his personal characteristics as a man and as a coach, what can you tell us about him that everyone pretty much agrees on?
He's a teacher. He was a teacher. He loved to teach. You could be standing there taking pictures, and players would speak to this. That he would tell you how to take a better picture. He would tell you how to golf better. Whatever you were doing, he loved the teaching, and that was what drove him. So I think the art of teaching, the art of communicating, he wasn't, as we all know, he wasn't a flashy, rah-rah kind of guy. As a matter of fact, there's a funny story where he tried one time in the locker room to tell a funny story, and it fell flat, and everyone just looked at him with blank stares because they had no idea what just happened. That's just who he is. He's a teacher, and that's, I think everyone, to a man that I've spoken to that spoke about Chuck Noll in some form or fashion, spoke to him in that regard.
Ron, we've been privileged to talk to Rocky Bleier both on this show and on a TV side. And with him, of course, as you know, it goes beyond football. You get goosebumps. Him talking about getting blown up in rice paddies in Vietnam, it goes well beyond the football field. But have you ever seen a guy that can tell stories like him?
No, he's great. I will say another good storyteller that you guys should get on sometimes, Gary Dunn, who tells a good, fun story. He's got more jokes and more just great experiences of him battling Webster on the freeway and fighting each other on the side of the Pittsburgh Turnpike because Webster made him look bad in practice. He's got great stories of Steve Corson and the way Steve Corson was back then. I don't know where he pulls all these stories out of, but he's just a fountain of fun stories on the team. And so I think he would be someone in a different way. He's not as deep, but in the way that he tells these stories, because they're more fun stories. But he's one guy. And John Kolb is another guy who he's just. I mean, he and J.T. Thomas, and he actually spoke about J.T. Thomas in our interview. But he's just wow. It's like speaking to the Dalai Lama when you speak to this guy. He just gives you such depth and such intensity. It's just incredible. He's just a fun guy to talk to.
Ron, switching gears a little bit, I want to get your thoughts on this year's team. The loss to the Jaguars in the playoffs last year still stings because of how poorly the defense played. Do you think the players that they brought in and they drafted can step in and make a difference on that defense and get these guys to the next step, maybe getting back to a Super Bowl?
It's going to have to be mostly the guys there that were there last year. I mean, there's a couple guys. I think Morgan Burnett is going to help a little bit in sort of that communication piece. But a lot of times when people talk about communication, they're really just saying someone screwed up, right? And I think what's happening is there's a lot of players screwing up. And Steelers are also the worst tackling team in the NFL, the most missed tackles of any team in the NFL. So this isn't about getting new people. I think this is a lot about fundamentals. It's about communication, about knowing your role, about knowing the playbook, and about doing the fundamentals, tackling the correct way. These are things that a rookie is frankly not going to be able to help much with, because this is the strategy, the sort of the deep thinking side of the game, and they're not going to have a rookie be a linchpin of that kind of thing when they can't even communicate with the veterans. So I think it's going to really be incumbent upon someone like Morgan Burnett, Sean Davis in the back end there. They're just going to have to get their signal calls better and just do the fundamentals better. And that's what I hope I will see. I'm actually going to be in camp, reporting on camp next week. I'm hoping we're going to see a lot more on the fundamentals as opposed to the physical.
And this is going to be a pretty important season for Bud Dupree. He's been somewhat of a disappointment so far, just like Jarvis Jones was. Do you think, he and T.J. Watt flipping sides of the line of scrimmage or flipping ends of the line of scrimmage is going to make a difference, and we'll see a little more production out of both of them this season?
I think a little bit. I worry that's going to help Bud Dupree and hurt T.J. Watt. But I think the logic, as I understand it, is that left tackles are usually not as big and bulky as the right tackles. And Bud Dupree is not a guy who's going to wow you with a flash move. His main thing is to overpower. So I think they're trying to line him up over a guy that he can be a little bit more physical with and win those battles. And Watt will be on the other side, dropping back a little bit more in coverage, where I think he's probably a lot more effective than Dupree would be. My concern, though, is can Watt at his size be a big right tackle? He's going to have to use a lot of speed moves to make that happen. He's not going to overpower guys at that position.
And Ron, what about the situation with Le'Veon Bell? Now that Todd Gurley has signed a 4-year, $60 million deal, do you think the Steelers will step up and in the offseason give Bell a similar number, or is he gone?
He's gone. I think he's gone, and I think, there's two sides to this. I think what people don't realize is, yes, he's not a big play guy, and that is true, but no one got more first downs the past few years in the NFL than he did. And that's a big number to replace. More than Todd Gurley, more than Antonio Brown, more than anyone. So this is a guy that, yes, he doesn't make big 50, 60-yard plays a lot, but this is a guy that takes runs that would be negative yards or 1 yards for most backs and turns them into 3 or 4 yard gains. And that's a huge difference on first downs. And people don't really put a lot of credence into that, I don't think. And I think that's what's going to be lost with him unless they can find a guy who has some similar skills. Or they're going to probably next year have to do a sort of a two-back set like they used to with the Moelde Moore and Van Morris type of situation, or Eric Bigram. I think that's what they're going to have to go to.
And Ron, over the last week, we've heard James Harrison say the reason Bill Belichick and the Patriots are better is because Mike Tomlin lacks the discipline that they have over there in New England. What do you make of that statement from Harrison? Sour grapes, or you think he's onto something?
Yes, probably. But I think maybe discipline is being misunderstood to an extent. I don't think, Antonio Brown flying in on helicopters upset people on Twitter. I don't get that. He's got a Hall of Fame player who gives it all every play. This isn't about people, exploring rap careers on the side. That's not the discipline that this team is lacking in. This is what I said earlier. This team is lacking in fundamentals and basics at times. The tackling. It's the worst tackling team in the NFL. I mean, literally missed tackles in the NFL. That's fundamentals. That's discipline. And that's what I hope he was referring to in Harrison, because I think that's what this team needs, is the discipline to do the fundamentals, do the basics, and focusing on those. And I'm really, really hoping in training camp this year, and hoping I'm seeing it next week, is a lot more focus with guys like Bradley, who's in to develop the secondary a little bit more. More focus on technique, more focus on fundamentals and the basics as opposed to how hard we can hit each other and that physical stuff that, is also important, but it's got, at this stage with this team, take a back seat to deeper dives into those techniques and fundamentals for this team to succeed on defense.
Bob, one more for Ron before we let him go?
Sure, Ron. Due to the success and interest in a book like Steelers Takeaway, I was just wondering if you had future aspirations to do something similar, maybe another sport, another team, or due to the success, and do you have any interest in doing that?
I do. I mean, it's funny because since the book, and there's over 400 people that were interviewed for that book. Mm-hmm. I've interviewed probably 150 to 200 more Steelers since. Guys from the 50s and 60s, coaches, on through today. So I'm in this quandary. What do I do with all those interviews right now? They're all on the site. Right. You can go see those. But, do I go back and do a Steelers Takeaways 2? Or I've also thought about, do I do something on other teams or other things entirely different, And so, I do think about that, but I also think about the fact that I've got 3 kids and a dog and a day job and everything else in between. So, unless I'm winning the lottery anytime soon, I could sit at home and type. It's, it all sounds very daunting right now.
Ron, remind our listeners how they can get a copy of your book, plus also follow you online and over social media.
Well, the book can be found on Amazon, all the typical Barnes & Nobles type places. It's called Steelers Takeaways. And my Twitter handle is Pittsburgh Sports. You can hear me talk and rant and rave and speak and see all the interviews. I'm also working a lot with Jim Wexell now on 24/7 Sports, so in Scout.com. So you'll see a lot of my interviews run with Jim on his Steelers coverage. And actually, I'll be in training camp next week, so you might want to sort of pay attention a little bit to what I'm seeing there, as I'll be doing that for Jim as well next week.
Well, Ron, thank you so much for coming back and sharing more of your stories with us here on the show. It's been great having you back, and it's also great following you on Twitter. And we can't thank you enough for sharing your stories and your insights with us. We hope you'll come back and do it, whether it's after training camp or early on in the season. Love to hear what you think.
Well, I'd love to. Thanks. And it's funny following all these great athletes, and now you got this book writer guy coming up. So I appreciate you having me on. And hearing the story.
Our pleasure.
Absolutely, it is.
Take care.
Ron, take care. All the best to you and your family. We'll catch up soon.
Take care, Ron.
All right, likewise. Take care.
That is Ron Lippock. And again, the title of the book is Steelers Takeaways, Player Memories Through the Decades. Again, available on Amazon.com, and you can follow him online at Pittsburgh Sports. Bob, great stuff from him and a lot of great stories. Love to get Gary Dunn or John Kolb on the show. That's got to be my takeaway from this episode, is to try to get in touch with those guys.
Yeah, great guy to talk to as far as when a guy that's done 400 interviews, Chris, he'll direct you to the good ones and people that would be very entertaining. But as when I first read that he had spoke to that many people, I was wondering, there's got to be another book down the road or something that's just a lot of information. But he's got some great stories.
Yes, he does. All right, when Bob and I come back, we'll be turning on the Thursday Night Tailgate Spotlight on the positive, so you can hear which players are doing great things out there in their communities and around the world. We'll do that. We'll wrap up the show on the other side of these words from our friends over at the Salt Creek Golf Retreat and Doubleback Winery.
If you're looking for a great place for your annual golf outing, a weekend golf getaway, or just a round of golf with your buddies, then Salt Creek Golf Retreat is just what you're looking for. Centrally located in Nashville, Indiana, just south of Indianapolis and west of Cincinnati. This challenging but fair 18-hole golf course appeals to all skill levels, and its scenic views of rolling hills and tree-lined fairways are sure to make golfing memories for years to come. Owned and operated by former Purdue and New York Giants fullback Randy Manier, Salt Creek Golf Retreat offers stay-and-play packages that include golf, and a fully furnished 1 or 2 bedroom condo. After your rounds, be sure to stop by the 19th Hole Sports Bar and Restaurant for great food, fun, and drinks. Randy and his staff will treat you like family. For more information, log on to saltcreekgolf.com. That's saltcreekgolf.com. Or give them a call at 812-558-5944. Salt Creek Golf Retreat. Start making your golfing memories today. Former NFL quarterback Drew Bledsoe, owning a winery has been a long-time aspiration that would allow him to combine his passion for fine wines and love of his hometown, the Walla Walla Valley. Drew returned in 2007 to plant his original estate vineyard, McQueen, on the southern end of the Walla Walla Valley. The following year, Drew launched Doubleback, an estate-focused winery with the goal to produce world-class Cabernet Sauvignon. Since the very first release, the 2007 Cabernet Sauvignon, Doubleback has received numerous accolades, including a spot on the Wine Spectre's Top 100 list. Drew's vision, brought to life by winemaker Josh McDaniels, remains to be a premium wine experience, completely focused on quality. To further assist the vision of high quality, estate-focused wine, Drew has acquired and planted 4 estate vineyards in the Walla Walla Valley, and recently broke ground on the future home of Doubleback Winery, which will open in 2018. Drew is committed to using only the most sustainable, superlative winemaking practices to ensure that Doubleback will be one of the best bottles of wine you will drink. We invite you to learn more about Doubleback and sign up for our mailing list at doubleback.com. That's doubleback.com.
Thursday Night Tailgate, where the spotlight is always on the positive. Tune in Thursday night from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time to hear your favorite NFL legends, players, and coaches sharing their stories. Now back to Chris and Bob.
I wouldn't joke about anything else that happens here tonight.
We are back here on Thursday Night Tailgate, and we're turning on our spotlight on the positive. Bob, who are you putting your spotlight on this week?
Today, Chris, we're going to give a shout-out to offensive lineman of the Detroit Lions, Kenny Wiggins. He had just signed a contract this past spring, Chris, 2-year deal with the Lions after having played a few years out in San Diego. So he has a lot of allegiance to California and everything, and this is a guy that went out to, he's been from Elk Grove, California. He played high school ball there, and he played his football at Fresno State in college, but he's with the Lions now. But just last week, Chris, before he's getting ready to go to training camp, he's very involved in this organization called Strikes for Kids. And Strikes for Kids is a organization, Chris, that they organize charity golf and bowling events. They have over 125 NBA, NFL players get together with local businesses, fans, and a lot of different families, and they actually do it for charity. And so Kenny Wiggins got involved in this going back to his area of California there. And this was strictly bowling, this classic. And they raised enough money in this event, Chris, last week that it provided over 125 backpacks for kids of Fresno County that are going to be going back to school soon. And they also had a little silent auction again. But they've already, Strikes for Kids has already hosted more than 100 events throughout the country. And so it's great that they can do this, Chris. They make a significant difference. And a lot of guys, professional athletes are buying into this whole thing. But charity golf and bowling is at the forefront of all their activities. And again, Wiggins is involved, and I'm sure what he did in California he'll continue to do in Detroit. We wish him luck both at with his new team and what he continues to do for Strikes for Kids. It's a great story.
Yes, it is, and thanks for bringing that one out, Bob. Tonight, I'm going to put my spotlight on a name that is near and dear to you. I'm putting it on the Acho family, and you spotlighted Bears linebacker Sam Acho a couple of times. And I'm going to put the spotlight on Sam, but also his brother Emmanuel, and who played for the Browns and the Eagles from 2012 to 2014, plus their parents, Dr. Sonny and Christy Acho. And Dr. Acho is a mental health professional and a pastor of North Dallas Living Hope Bible Fellowship Church. And Dr. and Mrs. Acho were both born over in Nigeria. And back in the 80s, Bob, they went back home and found that many of their friends and family were dying due to the lack of just basic over-the-counter drugs that can be found here in the U.S. And in 1989, they organized annual trips to Nigeria with volunteer doctors, surgeons, nurses, and pharmacists to bring the necessary aid to rural villages there in Nigeria. And Emmanuel and Sam and their sister Stephanie joined their parents on those trips as soon as they were old enough to help. And Emmanuel, who's now 27, has been on 20 missionary trips over there, and he would even go during the off season when he was with the Eagles. Back in 2017, just a little over a year ago, they opened the Living Hope Medical Center over there, and they perform surgeries for things like hernias and cataracts and other ailments, and they've done more than 1,800 of them and taken care of those patients. And in the past, they even helped bring, a lady who was blind over there, they helped bring her sight back, which is absolutely a miracle and fantastic. Emmanuel talked about how special it is to go back there, saying there's nothing closer to living the life that Jesus would want us to live than by going back to the villages in Nigeria where there is nothing but you, other people, and God. No technology, no cell phones, no internet, none of that stuff. He says it's the closest way to live the life, a serving life that Jesus would want us to do in its pure form by doing what they do. So, Bob, kudos to the entire Acho family for the great things that they are doing to help people over in rural Nigeria to get the medical and pharmaceutical attention that they vitally need. It's a very special family, Bob.
Well, Sam's name always comes up in this segment, Chris, so that kind of tells you what kind of guy he's been. Always got his name associated with the Walter Payton Award, and he's just an amazing individual, and one of the reasons why we saved this segment for the end is because of guys like him who you don't normally read about in the sports pages. You'll have to dig a little bit like you did, but we know how much good he does. I'm sure his name will come up again because he's one of these guys that is totally immersed in it. So kudos to him, Chris. It's so refreshing to end the show like that.
Yeah, it certainly is, and kudos to the entire Acho family. All right, Bob, time for us to put a bow on this episode of Thursday Night Tailgate. We want to send out our sincere thanks again to J.T. Thomas, Craig Colquitt, Wendell Davis, and Ron Lippock for joining us tonight. And, Bob, as always, it's such a thrill to spend my Thursday nights with you, my friend.
That went by quick, Chris. That was a fun show, and let's try it again next week.
We certainly will. Joining us next week will be our good friend and Florida A&M head coach Willie Simmons. Looking forward to catching up with Coach. Former Dodgers general manager Fred Clare will be back with us, as will former Rangers, Yankees, and Braves outfielder Billy Sample. Always a fun time having Billy as part of a segment. And former Steelers defensive back Randy Fuller will also be back with us. And, of course, Pro Bowl running back Tony Collins will be here as well. Want to remind everyone how you can follow us on social media. First, over on Facebook, we have a page for the show, Thursday Night Tailgate. Give us a like. That's very important to us. Plus, both Bob and I have our own Facebook pages as well. Please also check out our website, ThursdayNightTailgate.com, to see who some of our future guests are going to be. Plus, we've got links to all of our archive episodes as well that link back to our page over on Podbean. And folks, download the Podbean app. You can take us with you everywhere you go, whether you're in the gym or on your commute or in the mall, the grocery store, or on your walk, your run, on any of that sort of thing. You can stream any of our archive episodes for free there on the Podbean app or by going online to podbean.com. On Twitter, you can follow me at CT Mascaro. Bob is at Bob_Lazzari, and the show is at TNT Podcast. Bob, take us home, my friend.
Hey, we'll talk then, Chris. And we also want to thank our great announcer, Joe Lajanusa, for the terrific job he always does with our intro and ads. And we want to thank Kyle Turley and the Kyle Turley Band for the upcoming outro music. On behalf of myself and Chris, thanks everyone out there tonight for listening. We appreciate you the most. Until next week, good night, Kevin, and good night, Terry. We miss you guys.